Hello everyone, this is my December 2020 update. I sent out a request for questions on social media and I got a lot of questions. So I'll be going through those in this video, but before I get into that, I have two items that I wanted to talk about. First off, there's been some problems with shipping, and then the second one is going to be a general overview of my upcoming products that I'm working on. First off, shipping. So the problem is that I've been having an increased number of packages that are just being delayed by a significant amount of time, sometimes a few days, sometimes a few weeks. These are all domestic shipping package problems. International hasn't really had the same increase in reported problems, at least not yet. With domestic shipping, it's been pretty reliable. I use United States Postal Service, and most of my packages will ship priority mail, and that's been, really high delivery rate, sort of on the predicted time frames from them. So that's been, really good over the past several years. I started to see a spike in early December, and things have gotten significantly worse since then. I've actually looked into this problem online, and there are several news articles from pretty reputable news sources that have reported on this, and it looks like it's a really widespread problem with the U.S. Postal Service. There seem to be several contributing factors. They're just getting more mail this year than they're used to, and some of the other providers for shipping, like UPS and FedEx, have actually started limiting the amount of new mail that you accept into their systems, which has actually increased the Postal Service's domestic mail. And this has kind of just been snowballing. And the news articles that were talking about this were from early December, and I started seeing an increase in my problems then, but it's actually gotten much worse, and a lot of things that were shipped around the middle of December still haven't been delivered. I mean, a lot of packages do still go through on time or with a very small delay. I would say over 50%, well over 50% of my packages, but even 10% of packages having a problem is going to be a lot of packages, and I think it's actually quite a bit higher than 10% right now of my packages are seeing significant delays. Now, I fully expect they'll all get delivered eventually, but I just wanted to sort of give everyone a heads up that there has been this problem, and I didn't really realize it was going to be such a big issue, and I really do feel bad for my customers who ordered, like in the middle of December, expecting, 10 days should be more than enough time to get my package. And while most of them were delivered, people who ordered by December 15th, there are a significant number right now that I'm tracking and working with the Postal Service to try to figure out where they are. And I just feel really bad. An electric eel wheel nano, and they're expecting it by Christmas. And it's just looking like there's going to be a bunch of people that aren't going to get them. And I guess the best thing I've been able to recommend is just put a picture of the nano in a package, and it should get there pretty soon for those who are not getting their package on time. So hopefully, we still got 2 days. Hopefully a bunch of the ones that have been sort of lost in the mail will get delivered by Christmas Eve. But I'm not expecting they all will. And, I just don't have much to offer. If you're really frustrated, you're not going to be able to get a refund through the U.S. Postal Service. They don't offer refunds for delayed mail because they don't have a guaranteed delivery date. However, if you're really frustrated, you can contact me and I'll refund your shipping, and I'll just take those costs because, I do really feel bad about this. Now, on a brighter note, I've wanted to give a quick update on the product pipeline that I'm working on. So the top priority product is the next one that's shipping, and there's been the Kickstarter for this last summer already. This is the Electric Eel Wheel 6, of course, and things are looking really great there. I've got all of the final parts. I've got all of the parts in my possession, and right now we're working on just getting the last few plastic parts molded, and then final assembly will start. So things are looking really good there. The next product in my pipeline is the yarn counter. Now, this is something I've been talking about for a while, and I've got nearly final prototypes of this. I'm still having a few last changes tested by some beta testers, but this is really looking good. We've tested all sorts of different yarns with it now. We've tried it for different use cases and stuff. I'm really happy with the design, and pretty soon I'm going to start getting the plastic molds made. Once I get those molds made and get some samples back, if everything looks good at that point, I'll launch a Kickstarter. So hopefully there'll be a Kickstarter for this yarn counter launching sometime right after I start shipping the electric EO Wheel 6. The next project that's further out, but also looking very promising, is the cone winder. There's been a lot of interest in this, and I've actually got a couple of questions about that I'm going to dive into some more detail. This one, though, I've only been testing it myself. I haven't shipped it any samples out to beta testers. So what I'm expecting the next stage is going to be is pretty soon I'll be ready to ship out samples to beta testers, and they'll give their feedback. I'll make additional changes, and that process of sort of iterating will take many months before anywhere close to having plastic molds made for the custom pieces. I've also talked about a CSM, a circular sock machine, and that's something that's still very much preliminary. I think I have made some progress there, and there's some specific questions, so I'll talk about some of that progress later, but I certainly am not anywhere close to having a product for that. It's still very much just a research project for me at this stage, and trying to isolate what kind of direction I should go in. Edith asked a question about she called it the even winder for the electric EO Wheel 6. I think that means a level winder. Some people call it the woolly winder. That's a company that makes sort of this level winding device. I've called it an auto flyer in the past when I've posted videos about my progress on that. And I wanted to say that this is a project that I am constantly reevaluating and looking into. I would say at least once every few months, I open up my CAD program and I look at all of the different iterations of this that I've designed, and I think about other ways. I do have a new method that I'm working on, and I don't really want to do a video about it until I'm more certain that it will work. I've had so many different versions of this, and I'm really looking for something that works better than the solutions that are out there. There's a lot of downsides about the level winding systems for spinning wheels that exist. And if I'm going to do something, I want to make sure that I can do it at a reasonable price and that it hopefully solves at least some of the problems that exist with other level winding systems for the spinning wheel. But I know that a lot of you really want a system that will move the yarn back and forth automatically on your bobbin and make you not have to adjust the hooks. It'll definitely add cost, but it's something that I know people are, want me to try and solve. So it's definitely something that I'm constantly going to keep looking at. And I appreciate the questions on that because it makes me know that, there's still interest in it. And hopefully I'll have some interesting news. But in the short term, I don't expect to have any kind of a new flyer for the electric EO Wheel 6 that sort of solves this problem. Amy asked if she'll be able to order specific color bobbins with the electric EO Wheel 6. That's something I contemplated. I did allow that for the Kickstarter with the electric EO Wheel Nano, but I made quite a few mistakes. It was sort of hard to track all of that. It required a lot of packaging difficulties at the end, and I ended up deciding I'm not going to do that for the electric EO Wheel 6. So as I said on the Kickstarter page, you will receive a pack of 6 bobbins, and there will be 2 of each color. So hopefully you understand that. But it has been my stance from the beginning that that's the direction I'm going in. It's clearly stated on the Kickstarter page. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to offer that flexibility. Sky asked for a general update on the circular sock knitting machine. I talked a little bit about that during the beginning of this, but I'll give a little bit more detail on sort of the direction that I'm now leaning towards. In my testing, I just am not happy with how 3D printed parts for the CSM are performing, especially the ones that sort of rotate against each other where there's friction, which is sort of the cylinder and the cam. I'm just not getting sort of the nice smooth movement that all metal CSMs work. Also, there are a few different 3D printed CSMs right now, and people say they can get them to work, but you really have to use them in a certain way in order to make them work. And that's sort of what I don't want. I don't want it to be so much less of a knitting machine than the metal ones that people are like, oh yeah, it kind of works, but you have to do this, this, and this different. It's not going to work, or it's not going to be a good experience. And I really want to have a really high quality product. So I'm just running into that. Also, the existing 3D printed versions, they went with a simpler design that rotates the whole cylinder, and that causes the yarn to rotate, or the project that you're working on to rotate. And that's a problem. It also really precludes allowing a ribber to work with it. So there's all sorts of downsides with the existing ones. And you could fix that with a 3D printed one. I started going in that direction, but that causes even more moving parts. And a lot of the moving parts start getting smaller. So it becomes problematic. So the direction I'm leaning towards now is to make some of the parts, maybe most of the parts, in metal. And I'm really working on designs that allow modern manufacturing techniques to be done in an affordable way. Like, there are many changes you can make that will greatly reduce the cost of some of the metal parts. I'm talking with a few different companies that do metal fabrication, and they're really helping me sort of narrow in on a bunch of the design decisions that I have to make to keep the price down. So I'm still hopeful that I'll be able to make a mostly metal CSM for a lot lower price than the existing ones, but I am moving away from the purely 3D printed CSM that I talked about in my last video, just because I've tried a whole bunch of different versions and I'm just not getting it to be as smooth as I would like, whereas the metal ones are much better. I think injection molded parts might be might be much better than the 3D printed versions, but there's so much cost in making those molds, so much upfront cost, that I just don't know that the volume's there. So I might try doing a small number of metal ones and just sort of see how those work, and then try to gauge the interest in such a device before I decide what parts to make out of metal and what parts to make out of plastic, and figure out all of the costs of that. Right now, it's looking like making mostly metal parts is actually still going to be pretty affordable according to sort of what people were willing to pay. So that's the direction I'm looking at. And there's certainly a lot of unknowns yet. So this project is very much still a research and development kind of project for me, and I'm definitely not committing to making such a device in the future, but I am actively looking at my options. So another question about the CSM came from Britt, and she was asking, will there be replacement parts available? What sizes of yarn can you use? Will it work with hand spun? Those are questions I don't actually know. I haven't gotten to that level of testing, except for the replaceable parts. I mean, I do expect that I'll have replacement parts for anything that is likely to wear out on it. Like the spinning wheel, if it isn't a part that doesn't easily wear out, then I might not have it on my website, but if you contact me, I'll usually have some spares that I can get to you. So I guess I do expect to have replacement parts, but for like the size of yarn that will work, I mean, I would expect it would be similar to other CSMs on the market, but it's not something that I could give you a solid answer to right now. I mean, the thinner yarns generally work better with CSMs. That's definitely been true in my testing. But the exact maximum thickness of yarn that you could use is not something I can really give you at this point. And the last question about the CSM I'm going to ask today was from Chandra. She was asking, what's the estimated longevity on the 3D printed sock knitter? And what parts will wear out first? How will it be maintained? That sort of thing. So as I mentioned, I'm kind of leaning away from a 3D printed sock knitting machine at this point. If I do have it, that's something I wouldn't have tested yet. I expect that anywhere where it wears, like the cam, the flippers, and the cylinder would be the things that would wear out first. And that's something I would just have to test longevity of. But most likely those are going to end up being metal parts. And then the longevity of them will be much longer. It might not be something that I'll be able to test. I'll be able to say, we did, X number of socks through this machine, and there's really no wear yet. That's what I would kind of be able to say with a metal version. But I'll definitely keep people updated. I know that people are sensitive to how fast it will wear out. And if I see any kind of wear at all, I'll definitely report that in some videos as I get further along in that project. Kate asked a question about the cone winder. She mentioned that it seems like I'm focusing on the CSM community needs with the cone winder, and am I trying thinner yarns with the cone winder? So I will say that I'm trying to be responsive to the CSM community with the cone winder, because a lot of people there really want a cone winding device. But I really think it's nice to knit off of a cone as well. So I'll be doing some more videos about that, but it just, you never get a tangle. Like, I've used ball winders, especially my wife has used them a lot more than I, because she just knits so much more. And you always get a little bit of tangle, or you often get a little bit of tangling with the balls as they sort of come out. And with a cone, that's never a problem. So it really is nice to knit off of a cone, and I'm hoping to sort of be able to explain the benefits there. So I would say that my primary focus is on just showing how awesome the cone winder is for knitters. But I definitely want to serve the CSM market. Then the question about thinner yarns. So I have been testing with thicker yarns just because it's just me who's doing the testing so far. And I test the yarns, or I like to test the yarns that are the most difficult for the machine to handle. And that's going to be thicker yarns. I am almost certain that thin yarns will be very easy for the cone winder to handle. So I haven't really done much testing, or I haven't videoed that because it's just not very interesting to me. But I will definitely be testing thinner yarns, especially my beta testers. It'll be very similar to how we did the cone winder. Like, all of my early videos with the cone winder were fairly thick yarns because I knew that those were going to be the more difficult yarns. And then once I sent it off to the beta testers, they tested it with all sorts of, art yarns and bulkier yarns and really, really thin yarns. And they just made sure it worked with a lot of different yarns, more yarns, different types of fiber than I could ever test myself. So I expect that same kind of process to happen with the cone winder. I just haven't gotten to the point where I'm testing all of those different yarns on the cone winder yet. And the last question for today is from Melissa. She asked me how shipping's going, basically how are things doing this year versus last year. So I assume that she is sort of referring to the fact that there's a pandemic going on this year, and a lot of small businesses are having very significant problems. So I in fact know several people who run other small businesses, and they are hurting quite badly. I can say that while we've been impacted by the pandemic at Dreaming Robots, it's not too bad. It's not nearly as bad as a lot of my friends. I know I have good friends who've lost jobs or gotten sick from this. So my family is very fortunate, and I have nothing to complain about compared to a lot of other people that I know. So I think, just maybe to give a little bit more details on what's happened with my business, I think right as the pandemic was starting, there was a little bit of an increase in sales because it is all online, which is, my saving grace. I don't have people having to come to a store to pick it up. So that helps us. But I think that people were looking for things to do, and an e-spinner was a good solution, to take up some of the time that they were stuck at their house. But then sort of after that initial spike, things have sort of flattened out a bit, and I'm still getting plenty of sales. I mean, my business is not in any trouble financially. It's still going along, just not as good as maybe the previous year. I mean, that I don't actually have the exact numbers for myself even. I keep all of my accounting in QuickBooks, and I run reports at the end of the year to sort of look at the general trends from one year to the next. And sort of that's when I'll know exactly how things are doing. And I haven't done that yet for 2020. But I mean, it feels like things are probably going to be a little bit below where they were at for the previous year. But I don't know exactly how much it's going to be down, but overall, like I said, my business is doing okay in these very hard times, and definitely a lot of other businesses are doing worse. A lot of my friends, have lost their jobs, or their businesses are in much worse shape, and people I know have gotten sick from this. So my family is healthy, and the business is doing fine. So we definitely feel very fortunate about our position. So please don't worry about me. So on that somber note, I will say that ends all of the questions that I got. And let's make next year great. Happy spinning. And thanks for watching.